Welcome to A Wild and Simple Life, a podcast of literary fiction, simple living, and nature short stories. I'm Julianne, and I read and write all the stories you'll hear. Each episode offers a small pause in your day, a soft space to breathe, and stories that invite you to slow down and reconnect with what truly matters. In the show notes, you'll find links to the ad-free premium version of the show, my personal diary, merch that you can purchase to support the show, plus my beautiful limited edition framed nature short story prints. Each print and story celebrates the quiet beauty of simple living and the rhythms of the natural world. Only 20 of each story will ever be printed, so they truly are special. Thoughtfully framed and ready to inspire, they're perfect for your home or as a meaningful gift. I created this show as a way of sharing my writing and as a gentle reminder that happiness often lives in the overlooked. The way the sunlight moves through the trees, the hush of an early morning, or the comfort of doing things the old school way. Through these stories, I hope you'll rediscover the joy of enough. It's time now to settle in for the story and enjoy the moments that celebrate living a wild and simple life. Welcome to this week's short story. It's about a weary soul who retreats to a quiet valley, seeking solitude, but instead finds companionship in an old beekeeper. It's also about slow days spent tending to hives, gardening, sharing stories, patience, mindfulness, and the quiet beauty of simple living. It's a tale of slowing down, listening to the land, and discovering unexpected connections in the rhythm of nature. So get cozy with me, grab a warm drink, and enjoy this little story. The valley smelled of honey and pine resin in the late afternoon, the air thick with the sound of bees. I had come here to be alone, to live in a small cottage I inherited from my great aunt, tucked between the hills and the river. The world had been too loud, too fast, and I had wanted something else, something that hummed at the slow rhythm of seasons and softened into the earth. What I hadn't expected was the beekeeper. I first saw him one morning when I was out gathering wild mint and yarrow by the edge of the property. He was standing by his hives, the old wooden boxes stacked like weathered books, his veiled face turned towards the sky. He had the stillness of a tree, as if rooted to the land itself. I watched from a distance, my curiosity a quiet ember. It was a few days later when we spoke. I had ventured closer, drawn by the bees, and he turned at the sound of my footsteps. His face was lined with sun-etched creases, his beard streaked with silver. "You're the one in Alice's house," he said, his voice a warm rasp. "Yes, my great aunt." He nodded, as if this explained everything. She was a good woman. She knew the land. I didn't know what to say to that, so I only nodded. He gestured to the bees. "You like them?" "I think so. I don't really know much about them." He chuckled, low and rumbling. "They know plenty about you." Over time, our conversations stretched like the golden afternoons in which they took place. He told me his name, Thomas, though everyone liked to call him Tom. He had lived in the valley for nearly 50 years, keeping bees and tending a modest garden. He had built the cabin himself, planted the apple trees that now sagged under the weight of their fruit. Bees understand patience, he told me once, as I sat on the overturned crate watching him work. You can't rush them. You move slow. Let them come to you. Life's the same way. I had spent years moving too fast, running through days without tasting them, but here, in the quiet company of an old beekeeper, I was learning to slow down. I learned the difference between a drone and a worker, a subtle dance a bee makes when it finds something worth sharing. I learned how to strain honey through cloth, how to let the wax cool into golden sheets. I learned that silence was not emptiness, but something alive, something that carried the murmur of wings and wind through the trees. One evening, after a long day of tending the hives, Tom invited me to his porch. He poured honey into 2 cups of tea, the amber liquid catching the last of the sun. "You're staying then?" he asked. I thought about it, about how the valley had begun to feel like home, how the days felt full without feeling frantic. "I think so." He nodded, satisfied. "Good. The land needs people who listen." I sipped my tea, the taste of flowers and warmth lingering on my tongue. In the distance, the bees drifted back to their hives, carrying the last light of the day on their wings, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I had arrived. The following weeks settled into a rhythm. Mornings were filled with mist rising from the fields, the scent of damp earth mingling with the sweetness of wildflowers. Tom showed me how to check the hives, to look for signs of health in the colony. I learned the feel of a frame heavy with honey, the weight of a thriving world in my hands. Afternoons were spent in the garden. I started my own small plot behind the cottage, turning the soil with careful hands. Tom gave me a handful of his saved seeds, heirloom tomatoes, string beans, and marigolds to keep the pests away. "The bees will like these," he said with a knowing smile. In the evenings, we would sit on his porch or mine, watching the sky bleed into gold and violet. He told me stories of the valley, of the way it had changed and the way it had stayed the same. He spoke of Alice, how she had been the first to welcome him when he arrived, a young man with nothing but a few tools and a dream of a quiet life. "She had a way of making people feel at home," he said, staring into his tea, "just like you." I let the words settle in my chest, warm and steady. It was a strange thing, feeling at home in a place I had barely known. And yet, as I listened to the bees hum their lullaby to the dusk, I understood what he meant. One day, as summer softened into autumn, Tom surprised me with a small wooden box. "For you," he said, setting it on my porch. I lifted the lid and found a bee suit folded neatly inside, along with a small hive of my own. "They'll need a home," he said, "and I think you're ready." I ran my fingers over the soft mesh of veil, the weight of the gift settling over me like a promise. "Thank you," I said. He nodded, a small smile on his weathered face. "Welcome to the family." And so, with the valley stretching before me and the hum of bees in the air, I stepped into a life I hadn't expected, but had somehow always been meant to find.